Hello, in this lesson we're going to discuss angle pairs and their relationships. The first one that we're going to talk about are adjacent angles. Well, the word adjacent, that's a word we don't use that often. It means next to. So that's kind of what the word adjacent means. So you can see right here we have angle 1 and angle 2 that are next to each other. We call those adjacent. The definition of adjacent angles means they're two angles that share a common side. And in this picture right here, the common side is this side right here. So we would say that angle 1 and 2 are adjacent angles. The next angle relationships that we're going to talk about are vertical angles. Okay, vertical angles. They are formed by intersecting lines. And this is an example of intersecting lines. And vertical angles are always, I'm going to call them VAs, vertical angles are always congruent. Remember that symbol for congruent? I'll make that a little neater. Congruent means equal to. So let's take a look at this picture and decide which angles would be vertical angles. Vertical angles, another word we think of is angles that are across from each other. So in this case, angles 1 and angle 3 would be vertical angles. All right, and the other set of vertical angles would be 2 and 4. And angle 4 would be vertical angles. Those angles would also be congruent to each other, which we will talk about in a little bit. Okay, on to complementary angles. That's something you guys heard before. Real quick, if you don't remember, that just means that they're two angles that add to 90 degrees. So if we take a look at these pictures, they can be this is an adjacent set, and this right here would be non-adjacent, that side right there. Okay, they don't have to be adjacent. So if we looked at this example real quick, if this angle right here was 60 degrees, well, they have to add up to 90, so we know this angle would be right here would be 30 degrees. Over here, this example with the 34-degree angle, they might ask you to solve for x. So to solve this problem, we know that 34 plus x has to equal 90 degrees. So, or if you want to think about it, all you have to do is subtract 90 minus 34, because that's how we'd get this. We'd subtract 34, and that would give us our answer, which would equal x. So x would equal, in this case, 56 degrees. If you see a problem like that, that's all I have to do to solve. All right, the other relationship that we could see are supplementary angles. Supplementary angles, that just means that they add to 180. Here are two examples. Again, it can be adjacent or non-adjacent. So if this one was 100 degrees, well, this one would have to be 80 degrees because they have to add up to 180. Here's an example of two adjacent supplementary angles, and they might ask you to solve for x. So again, we know that x plus 65 has to equal 180 degrees. So if we want to solve for x, we just say that x will equal 180 minus 65. And when we do that, we'll get x equals 115 degrees. Okay, on to a linear pair. Okay, when you look at linear pair, all it is a special name we give it to adjacent supplementary angles. That's all that is. We know what adjacent angles are. We know what supplementary angles are. That's all linear pair is. Again, it's two angles that form to make a line, that word linear. And here it is, two adjacent angles, there's the line. So angle 1 plus angle 2 would equal 180 degrees. And then finally, here's an example of what we'd use this information for. They'd give you a picture like this. Here's our vertical angles. They would say find X, Y, and Z. Well, in this case, the first one I'd solve for probably is Y, because these are vertical angles that are across from each other. So we know that they're congruent. So Y equals 76 degrees. If I want to find X, well, X and 76, these are a linear pair. You can see that these two angles form that line. They're a linear pair. So I know that X is just going to equal 180 minus 76. So X is 104 degrees. And then I know that since X is 104, Z would be 104, because those are vertical angles. Or you could say that it's a linear pair again with 76. So Z would also be 76 degrees. That's all for this lesson.